Hey guys, this is Steve from CG Geek back with the 7th and final part to our modern interior tutorial series in Blender. This is the part where we finish off the materials, then move on to the rendering and compositing to get a finished, beautiful looking result. So I hope you guys are excited as I am to finish off this series, and let's get into it. Also, one other thing I wanted to mention again before we get into the tutorial is that if you want to download the finished tutorial scene that you see here, you can do that over on my Patreon page for just $3 a month, and you'll also get access to all the other finished scenes on my channel. So if you saw something and you want it, for just $3 a month, you can support me on CG Geek and you can get access to all those downloads. So consider that if you're interested in that, and let's get on to the tutorial. Okay, so for the couch material, it's going to be kind of a similar process to the wood material, except we're using a new texture and we'll be doing a few tweaks. So to start, let's go ahead and give it the basic material by going material and then clicking that button to make it unique or make it its own. And then we're going to go ahead and open up a texture. So Shift A, texture, image texture right there. And we're going to go ahead and open up a fabric texture included in the description right here. It's kind of like a carpet texture actually. But I'm going to go ahead and connect the color to the base color. So go ahead and grab that, connect it to the base color, and we should be good to go. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a hue saturation to kind of tweak this again. So color, hue saturation, and then an RGB curves for another bit of control over how the texture looks. Not a color ramp, color RGB curves. Alright, so this will give us some nice control over the way it looks. If I go Shift B and grab a section of it here, I can get to rendered and we can see how this starts affecting. Okay, so right now you can see it's just a really gross looking, first of all the texture is being repeated pretty much not being repeated because we haven't set up a texture coordinate yet. So let's do that now. We're going to go ahead and give it an input texture coordinate, and then a vector and a mapping. This will allow us to repeat the texture multiple times across our object. So we're going to choose UV, drop it into the vector, connect the vector there, and now if we change the scale to 20 on all of these values, it will repeat it 20 times across the mesh. And so right away you can see that you no longer see those blobby textures because it's very tiny little hairs now basically as it's being spread across our mesh. All right. So for now, I'm going to kind of tweak the colors a little bit. I want to change the hue a little bit to a lower number, like a 0.47. This will give it a little bit of a nicer hue tint. Take the saturation down a little bit, and then take the value down quite a bit to make it a darker material. So we'll go down all the way to 0.4. All right, now in the RGB curves here, we're going to go ahead and tweak the values to make it a little bit redder. So just a tiny bit. We can go ahead and give it a little bit of a reddish look there, and then maybe take the blue value just down a tad. Okay, and then we can go back, and maybe let me see here. Maybe still a little darker, so we can do that in the RGB curves right there. All right, so now the specularity. Way too much specularity right now. We're going to take this down to about a 0.13, so we have a nice shallower amount of speck, but we still want a little bit of speck. But you can see that it's nice and flat, and I mean, not nice. We don't want it to be flat like that. It's terrible and flat. So we're going to use the roughness again to give it some breaking, to break up that specular map and give it the kind of textured roughness that we want. So I'm going to use the color, brightness, and contrast. We'll grab that texture again, drop it into there. Just like before, we're going to take the contrast way down on this. So if I go Control Shift, you can see that it's a very pale, just slightly textured looking texture, I guess. And then we're going to go ahead and add in a converter color ramp. We're going to kind of pull in the blacks just a little bit here, and then we're going to pull in the whites quite a bit as well. Something like that. And then drop it into the roughness value. So if I go back to our principled shader now, you can see that these specular areas are diffused quite a bit. They're no longer just shiny, but you have sort of that variation added to it. And that's looking it's looking pretty good. Maybe I can take the black value down just a little bit. And then the last one, which is going to again have the most effect probably, is the bump. And I'm going to go ahead and add in a converter bump right there. Vector bump. And connect the normal to the normal. And then we're going to go ahead and add in our texture here. So just like before, I'll duplicate both the color ramp and the brightness and contrast. Connect it up right here. This time I'm going to leave the contrast at, well, we'll just give it a 0.1 for a little bit of variation. And then I'm going to connect the color to the height right there. And again, we don't really want to control this too much. So I'm going to pull this out so we're not changing it too much yet. And we'll give it a strength of about a 0.25. So this is going to be a little bit more bump because it's a couch and it's usually kind of a rougher surface, kind of hairy surface. Choosing invert on this texture I found looked a little nicer as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. And there we have it. That should kind of wrap up our material. And we can kind of tweak it as we go. Maybe after our first render we'll see something that needs to be tweaked a little bit. And maybe have it repeat a bit more. So I might take this up to like 25 on those values to make it repeat a bit more. But I think it's looking pretty good. All right, we can take our IOR value down a little bit here because we don't need quite as much. But after that, this all looks to be fine. We can leave it. We don't need any sheen or clear coat or anything on this. And that should do it. So there's our couch material. And let's move on to the next material. Okay, so as long as we're doing fabric at the time, let's go ahead and do our cushions here. So I'm going to grab the cushion, hit period on my number pad to zoom in on it. And we'll go ahead and tab. And did we unwrap these? I don't think we did. So this is very easy to unwrap though. We're just going to go Control R and put a cut in the middle or towards the bottom here. We'll go Control E, mark seam. I'm sorry, I didn't put a cut. I just selected it with Alt and right. I don't know what I was thinking. And then I'll select everything and go U, unwrap. So we'll have two sort of unwrapped faces right there. And then to kind of reduce the stretching here, we can go to UVs and minimize stretch. And this should kind of help give us a better look. So I'll just click to stop that. And okay, so let's go ahead and give it a material here. Just a new basic principled material shader. So Shift A, principled material shader, connect it up. And this is just going to be a texture. So image texture right there. And the front one here is kind of a lighter colored texture here. Let me just open it up. I'll show you guys which one this is. This is kind of this one right here. And if I switch to textured view here, we can kind of see how it's being laid out right now. Not super great. Let's go ahead and open up that texture down here as well. That fabric pattern right there. And I can just grab these, kind of rotate them and scale them until I'm getting it laid across the way I want. All right, so something like that is more what I'm looking for. And you can see that looks pretty decent all the way across. The back side isn't going to be working quite as well because this one has to be rotated into place as well. But it's not super noticeable from the back side anyways, so you don't have to worry about it too much. I'll just kind of line it up a little bit to those edges there, and we'll call it good. All right, so there's that material. We have to unwrap this one real quick as well. So grab that edge, Control E, mark seam, grab everything, U, unwrap. And then we'll go UVs, minimize stretch, and I'll kind of fix that a bit. And then for this material, let's go ahead and make a new one here. We can duplicate this one, so it's material 6. We'll just grab material 6 again, but hit that check mark. This one is going to be, let's go ahead and open up a new texture here. This one's going to be kind of the colored pattern here. So we'll grab that one, and then we need to tweak these UVs as well. Let's change this fabric pattern to the other one. All right. And then we'll grab these, rotate them, scale them, and just kind of get the proper sort of looking pattern that we want. Scale it up a little bit more. And then that's close to what I'm looking for. Not quite exactly yet, but it's getting there. I'm just going to kind of move these around until I find, okay, I like those colors a little bit more. We'll leave it right about there. Alright, and that's looking pretty nice. And we don't have to worry about the back side because it's not really visible, but I will rotate it just so it's straight. Okay, cool. So there's our two materials, and for the material itself, it's pretty simple. We don't really have to do anything for this material because I like the colors already as it is. Actually, looking at this, I'm thinking that this should be rotated a little bit that ways. Yeah. Whoops. Maybe scaled a little bit more. Okay, and then maybe grabbed, whoops, Option H, I accidentally hit it. Grab it along the y-axis to kind of, or actually along the x-axis to kind of pull in those colors a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah, those colors look kind of nice up there. Okay, so for these materials, it's, like I was saying, it's pretty simple. We're just going to tweak the principled shader here a little bit. So we're going to take the specularity down quite a bit on, let's grab that. Okay, yep. Specularity down quite a bit. The roughness is going to be quite a bit higher because we don't want it to look shiny, as the fabric usually doesn't look shiny. And then the IOR can come down to about a 0.35, but everything else can pretty much stay the same. We're just going to tweak the spec and the roughness. Now for this material though, this one's a little bit different. The only thing is that I want to control the colors a little bit. So for this one, let me quick check on my other screen here. I tweaked the colors of this texture a little bit. So I added in a color hue saturation value and took the hue up a little bit, about 0.52. Took the saturation down a little bit. And then I added in a color RGB curves. And with this, we can kind of tweak the colors until we like them. So I'm going to go ahead and go into rendered view here. One thing we can do too is grab the couch material. Let's go ahead and name it couch, so we're nice and organized. Grab the ends here and give that the same couch material. Awesome. So now I'm going to go Shift B to kind of grab that corner there. We'll save our project and we'll see what this is looking like rendered. Give it a second to load in here, and you can see we have some pretty nice looking cushions right there. So I did want to quick tweak this a little bit with the RGB curves here. I'm just going to go to the red value, and if I go to rendered view here so we can see what it's looking like, there we go. I can go ahead and add in some points here to kind of tweak the red values. So I kind of wanted to pull up the reds a little bit in certain points and not in others. So kind of giving it a snake shape is what you want to kind of pull the colors the way you want them. You can actually kind of do this in textured view too and see, I believe this works, right? No, maybe it's material. Switch to material view there, and then if I tweak this, yeah, you can kind of see what I'm saying. By tweaking these, you can get a little bit more of the reds and whites the way you want them looking. All right, and then I also changed the green values here a little bit as well, kind of to get rid of some of that bluish hint. You can kind of add in a little bit of green and then pull it away down here. Yeah, give it a little bit more of a pinky sort of material, like that. All right, and that is what I was looking for. Okay, so let's kind of finish off our tables here. These have some kind of cool looking materials. Not cool looking materials, but basically cool looking colors. So these are kind of what give it a pop to the scene. So let's go ahead and do this table first. Grab it, hit period, hit that button to make it unique, and let's give it kind of a sky kind of blue color here. A little darker, a little bit more, like something like that looks pretty good. All right, and then this is going to be pretty specular, so we can leave it about a 0.6. And the roughness is going to be right on the middle ground. We're going to go about a 0.25 or so, and that looks pretty good. And then we can give these a bit of sheen as well. So I'm going to crank up the sheen a bit. We'll give it about a 0.5 sheen. And then I can take the IOR down to about 0.35 again. And that should do it. So that is good for that material. Let's go ahead and name this blue. All right. And we can go ahead and add the same material to this by typing in blue. All right. Hitting that checkbox, except this one is going to be more of a white. Maybe not 100% pure white, but close to white. All right. Something like that. And then this same material can be used for some of the dishes on the table, like this here. I can go ahead and scale this dish up a little bit. Scale almost that a little bit. All right, something like that. And actually, this can kind of come in a little bit too. Yeah. So for this, I'm going to give it the blue material. I'm going to hit that checkbox though, because this is going to be a blue-green. So I'm going to go ahead and change it right now to blue-green. And we're going to go ahead and grab a material that looks, well, kind of a nice blue-greenish look. So maybe something a little darker, something like that should do it. And then for these dishes here, again, we're going to grab that blue material. So grab material. We have to hit plus first, of course. And grab that material, blue. We're going to have to make sure we assign it to it. Hit that checkbox. And this one is going to be kind of a darker blue. So we can kind of move over to the darker blues here and then make our material a little bit darker as well. Something like that. And we'll give it a material right there. So make sure that's assigned. Yes, it is. And then this here can have the same darker blue material. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in right here. Blue 2. And we can assign it. But what's kind of cool now is we can give the top lid here. We'll grab that face, hit Control plus, so it's kind of like the top lid. We'll give that the white material. So now if I go to material here, we can see that it has its own material on top there for kind of a nice little bit of variation. And this is all looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and add the materials to our cushion back here. This one, I'm going to hit period on my number pad to zoom in on it real quick. And this one is going to be similar to our fabric material, except we don't need a texture. So I'm going to go ahead and just add in a new material. We'll delete the diffuse and give it a shader, principled shader. Everything is principled. We'll connect it to the surface, and we're just going to give it a base color of kind of that pinky orange sort of material that looks nice. A little bit darker maybe. And just kind of experiment with this color until you get one that you're happy with. You can even change the colors in your scene to give it some variety, make it something of your own. But yeah, just something like that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit pinkier would be good, a little redder. All right, that looks pretty good. And then this is going to be not too specular because it's again a fabric. And then there's going to be more roughness again because it's a fabric. So we don't want it to be too shiny. So about a 0.7 and then a 0.2 or maybe even a 0.18 for the specular. And then we don't want any sheen and any clear coat. And we can take the IOR value down to about a 0.3. And that should do it for that material. So let me go ahead and save. We didn't give this cushion any material either, but you can kind of leave this as its own, just a white cushion if you wanted. We can go ahead and give this the material of this. So it's material 5. We'll just call this, what should we call it? Couch 2, I guess. Something we can remember. And then we'll type in couch 2, grab that material, hit that checkbox, except this one is going to be more of just a white looking cushion. All right. So we're getting close to finishing up the materials to our scene now. Things are starting to come together and look pretty nice. Let's go ahead and add in our, let's do a clock because it's staring right at us. So first off, I'm just going to grab the surface of the clock and hide it because I want the face behind it. Do I have a face behind it? Let me quick check. Face select. Yes, I do. Right there. Make sure it's pulled away from the wall enough that it's visible. And we're going to have to go U and unwrap. So now we can go ahead and open up our clock image. Let's see right here. Just a texture off CG Textures. That again will be linked in the description. So I'm scaling it down to line up the top and bottom to the clock. I'm going to go to the inside, so we're just taking the white values of the image. All right, something like that. Looks good. And then I'll scale it along the x-axis to pull it in along the edges until we get just the white areas inside our circle. It looks good. So I can go ahead and tab out of that. We're going to give it a new material. We're going to go ahead and give it that principled shader. Principled, right there. Connect it up, and then Shift A, texture, image texture, grab that clock image again, right there and connect it to the base color. And there we have it. I need to quick change this to a glass material. So for the glass material, we're just going to go ahead, hit plus, create a new material. This one is going to be a shader glass. We're just going to change the IROR value to be 1.333 and connect it to the surface. And that's all we really have to do. We're just going to go ahead and assign it to it now. So I'm going to go Alt-H to unhide it, hit L to grab our sphere there, and assign the glass to it. All right, and then let's make sure the rim has material 0, just the base material, applied to it. And if I go to camera view here, let's check out what that's looking like by grabbing it and going to rendered view. And we should be having our clock be visible. And it's not really visible at all. I can't see it. Okay, so we just have to quick tab into edit mode here, select the face, and make sure we have our clock material assigned to that. Awesome. So now if I went to rendered view, we should see our clock on the wall, and we do. So that's coming in nicely. Oh yeah, the rotation is one thing that needs to be addressed. Let's tab into edit mode, whoops, on that object. Select the vertices here. And I can just rotate these around until we have our head pointing upwards. If I switch to material, this will be easier. Let's put our cursor in the middle there. And actually, let's just unselect those there. Yeah. And then we can rotate this until the clock is pointing upwards. Perfect. And that's looking nice. Okay, so now it's time to finish up the materials with some of the more detailed materials, and that is going to be like the books over here, for example. So let's go ahead and select the books, hit period on our number pad to zoom in on them, and right now they're all separate objects. We could speed up our process on doing this if we combine them all into the same object. So let's go ahead and grab them all, unselect that, and well, we'll leave those two separate because those will be a little different. But let's just make sure we have those selected and then go Control J to make them all the same object. Now I'm going to tab into edit mode and we're going to unwrap the ends of these. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select all the end faces here. Control Z, just the ends. So with those faces selected, you're just going to go U, unwrap, and then you can see that they don't unwrap perfectly evenly here. So we're just going to have to grab these vertices, the top of each of these bookends, like so, and then grab them along the X to straighten them out, like so. And we'll grab them all, rotate them -90 degrees, so standing up nicely there. And we'll grab these two as well, straighten them out, like so. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up an image texture. This is one I found off Pinterest, and I'll include it in the description, but it's just a bunch of cool looking older time books, as you can see here. And these work really well for our bookends. So I'm just going to rotate these 90 degrees and move them over here so you can see a little bit better. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that texture up here. So first of all, we need to tab out of that and make this our own material. We'll just call this books. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in the texture up here as well, so we can see what it looks like in real time then as we adjust our UV maps. So drop it in there, grab that texture again, right, so. And now if I go to textured view, we can see our texture here. And if I tab into edit mode, I can grab these faces. Let me switch to face select mode right here and just place them over different books. So this will be the Jungle Book, and I'll scale it down a little bit, scale along the x-axis a bit. And actually I think I want this to be rotated. Oh, actually that's fine. Right about there. Scale it down a little bit more maybe. And again, I might have to fix some of these edges here because it didn't unwrap evenly. So you might have to just tweak those around a little bit to straighten them out. But then place it over the book title, like so, and move on to the next one. So let's just hit L to grab the whole edge there. This one will be, let's go Romeo and Juliet. Drop it in there, scale it up a bit so we can fit it in nicely. And you can see over here that it's looking pretty good. And then the next book. So this is a quick way of adding a whole bunch of different books into your bookshelf without having to painfully model and texture every single one individually. You could just do it this way and get them all in at the same time. So this is a huge time saver if you're doing things quickly and efficiently. All right, so let's grab this one. Let's put this yellow book in there somewhere. Okay, That looks pretty good. Let's grab this one. Let's put Sherlock Holmes in there. Oh yeah, gotta get Sherlock Holmes in there. Okay, that's looking pretty good over there. Scale it along the Y maybe a little bit. Pull up a little bit more, and let's put Jane Eyre in there as well. So we'll grab that, scale it along the X-axis to fit the whole book title in there. Scale it along the Y-axis a little bit. Okay, and a little bit too much scaling along the X, so pull it back and fit that in there nicely. And then we have one more here, so we can put anything we want. Let's put Huckleberry Finn in there. So we'll drop it up there and scale it right about so. Okay, so that is the basics for your bookends. Now what you might have to do, depending on your view, if you're going to be seeing some of the faces here, is you might have to make a new material. You can go ahead and grab that book's material again and check that box to make it its own. Disconnect the texture from this and just give it the texture, the color on the face of that. So I'm going to go ahead and assign this new material to that. And then the color of this material will just kind of be the color of that book. So I'm going to grab our eyedropper, grab that color there, and assign it. So how come I should be seeing that updating there? Maybe if I go to material, that's what I need to do. Yeah, and you can see that that kind of just finishes it out. So anywhere you might see the ends, you need to do this. So you can go ahead and do it as many times as you want, grabbing it, making it its own material, assigning the book face to it. So like for this red one that's kind of sticking out here, we might see that face. So we'll assign it to this, and then I'll change the color to be the color of the bookend. All right. And then maybe the Jane Eyre book too. That would be the last one I'll do though, because these aren't going to even be too visible in our camera angle. So go ahead and make that its own material, grab that face end, assign it to the new one, grab the color, and make it the color of the bookend. All right, and then the last thing is the edges up here. These can have more of a paper look to them. So I'm going to grab the edges on this end. All right, these faces. That one, and then hit Control plus just once. We're going to go ahead and plus that material, and we'll just give it our blanket white material. That's all you really need, and assign it. So now you can see that you have some more detail to your books. And that is a quick way of modeling books. So that's good. And the last thing is for a book that you might want a little bit more detail, like this one, because it's also going to be right here, is you're going to grab the edge there by alt-clicking it, unselect the face right here. So go ahead and alt-click everything, so it's selected all the way around, unselect that face. You're going to go U, unwrap, and this time we're going to open up a new image. So image, open image. This is going to be our art in Blender book. So let's go ahead and make this material unique and drop the texture in up here so we can work on the way it looks. And this is, let me go ahead and open it real quick so I can see it. Drop it in the base color there. And now we can position this. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, scale it up. I'll rotate it 180. And this is just kind of a way that you can sneak any sort of artwork into your scene, and it's kind of fun because it's kind of like a little Easter egg. Then once you've hidden some of your projects into the scene. So I'm going to grab the face select mode and just going to hit Y to separate this, and then pull it over so we can fit and scale it along the X. So we can kind of make up our own bookend here, where it's just another little picture of him, nice and tight. And then we'll grab these, and the other end isn't visible, but if it was, it would be the same again. Cool. So that's a way to quickly add your own texture to the book. And we also have that book over here. So you would have to do the same thing. First, grabbing that face there, you unwrap, and we'll give it the same sort of material, whatever that one was, material 10. So go ahead and change this to material 10. Just type in 10. It'll pop up right there. And then we just have to tweak our unwrapping to fit the cover of the book. And that looks about right. Maybe tweak it just a little bit more to get that in there nicely. And we're not going to see any more of the faces than just that. Maybe we can go ahead and select this, hit period to zoom in here, unselect that, and unselect that. Okay, so this we want to be hit plus, want this to be that base material, so assign that to that, and then Control I. All right, Control I. Everything else can be, except for that face that we already unwrapped here, so Shift L to unselect that. Everything else can be unwrapped again. In this case, we might just Smart UV project it. Okay, and then I'll just scale it in, just so we have some color on the edges here. And maybe this face will be unwrapped separately, so we can kind of do the same thing if you want it to be visible. But again, it's probably not even going to be visible, so don't waste too much time on things that might not be seen. That's just a waste. So I do need to grab that face there, that top face, and pull these two vertices on the end a little bit. So grab those, grab them along the X, and just pull them in a little bit there. All right, so there you have it. A nice, decent looking book, all ready for render. So that is some of the details, and we're almost done with the materials, guys. Just a little bit more. One thing we have to quick do, the stem here on this material, just give it a basic green material. Nothing else is really necessary because it won't be super visible. And then also, we had a batch of ferns in my final render that I didn't set up in the modeling phase. So I might just grab these, Shift D them, pull it over, pull it out, and scale it up. So we can put that big, larger pot of ferns down right there. If we go to camera view, we can kind of check out what this is looking like. I think I just want to pull it up along the Z-axis a little bit there. And then we're going to have to create, boom, go in here. I'm going to have to make this kind of a tall pot. So I'm going to scale up along the Z, pull it down to the floor. So we just kind of have a tall looking sort of pot back there with those flowers on them. Okay, or not flowers, they're ferns. Alright, so you can see that our scene is almost finished now with just a few materials left. Alright, so let's quick give these pots and pans over here a few materials, and then we'll call the materials section done. So first off, let's quick grab our frame here on our shelf, and we need to give these the black glossy material. So I'm just going to grab the framework for the poles here, and we'll go ahead and click plus, grab the black glossy material, and assign it to those. Alright, so now for the pots and pans, I did add a texture to this pot right here, as I thought it added a little bit of a nice looking sort of variation. So I'm going to go ahead and select our pot here and just go, let's quick give it a few cuts, I guess. We'll go ahead and cut it right across the middle here. So Control E, mark seam, and then I should just be able to grab that and go U, cylinder projection. Yes, I can. We can scale it up, and let's open up that image. So first off, make it its own material by clicking that box, and then Shift A, image texture, right there. I'm going to grab the material that I used, and it's just this kind of little flowery material here. So I'm going to drop that into the base color, and you can see that that looks like that. And now I can grab that and scale it to make them a bit bigger. So something like that. And then maybe scale it along the Y just a little bit, like so. And that hit period to kind of zoom in there. That looks nice. It's just kind of a basic sort of pot material. And then for the material itself, I just gave it a bit less roughness, so it's going to be a little shinier. And then everything else can pretty much stay the same. You can change the IOR value, but that's it. All right, and then for the lid, we'll just go ahead and duplicate this material. So I'll go plus, grab material 12, hit that button, and then we'll hit L to assign it to the top one here, but we don't need a texture on it. Maybe give it a little bit of a creamish color to kind of match that of the texture. All right, and then for the other materials here, guys, it's pretty much the same deal, making it its own material, giving it kind of a unique color. Maybe this one will be kind of that red one up here. Make it a little bit redder, make it a little darker. Something kind of like a maroon colored metallic looking pot. All right, that looks pretty good right there. And then just give it a very shiny-ish material by taking the roughness down quite a bit. And yeah, call it good. So then these things are kind of like clay. So for these, I gave them a little bit more roughness, a little less speck, and then just kind of a unique clay color. Doesn't really matter what you choose, like that. Same for this one. Less speck because they're kind of clay, and then this one will be kind of a darker clay. Okay, something like that. So you guys should probably get the idea at this point of how this all works. I'm going to grab material 14 for down here. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 14, grab it, check that box so I can just tweak the colors of it, make it something different. That looks pretty good. Same thing over here. You can start just duplicating your colored materials. So this one will be material 16 down here again. And this one will be material 14 again, except I'll change it. So I'll click that checkbox. And we'll give this one kind of a brighter looking color there. These things can just be pretty much a brighter white color. So I'll grab that material. Let's grab the clay material there. So clay material 16. But these will be more of like a white clay. So we'll just make it a brighter. Whoops, I did not check that box. There we go, yeah. Make it just kind of a brighter sort of clay material there. Yes. And this one can be the same. Well, actually, we might give it a little variation just to keep things interesting. A little darker maybe. Okay, so yeah, that's gonna do it though. Let's just give these, I don't know, are these even visible back there? Not really, but we'll give them the same material as the lid here. So this is right here, material 13. So grab material 13 over here, drop it on there, check that box so we can give it a little bit of a darker color maybe. Same thing up here, grab material 13, check that box, and we'll give this one, let's try a darker pot color. And that will do it. What color is this again? Material 16. Drop that in there. Maybe make this one kind of a brighter colored. Yeah, something like that. Looks good. All right. And this one doesn't have a material either. So we'll give this material 13 as well. Hit that checkbox. And you can see we're just making a bunch of variant materials that are pretty similar. All right. I think if everything went right, that should wrap up our materials section. There's going to be tweaking that needs to be done now. You just have to kind of expect it. So let's set up a basic render so we can get everything in a render so we can kind of overview it all and then tweak the materials that need tweaking. Okay, so first off, I'm going to change my camera angle just slightly at this point. I want to be able to see a little bit more of the wood over here. So I'm going to do that and then grab it and pull it over this way a bit. Something like that. Maybe pull the camera in a little bit closer. Let's go ahead and grab this table here, unselect everything else, and pull it in a little bit as well. Grab it along the Shift Z so you can just kind of place it wherever you want. And we can kind of spread these things out a little bit as well. So I'm grabbing those, unselecting everything else, grab them along the X-axis a little bit, and then this guy too. Grab along the X, oh, grab the top piece as well, grab along the X and grab along the Y to pull it out a little bit more, like so. So it looks nice. All right, so let's set up a basic render. We don't want this render to take very long. I'm gonna go Shift B to make everything selected, because if these renders are taking a long time and you're tweaking things constantly, it's gonna take forever. So we're gonna change it to a 1280 by 720 render. We're gonna give it 100% there. And we're going to give it a very low sample count. So we'll leave it at 128 samples, which is pretty low. Actually, let's go even lower. We'll go 50 samples. We'll change it to render on our GPU. And if you don't have a GPU that can render, just render it on your CPU. That's fine. Under render settings, make sure you still have denoising checked, as that's going to speed things up a bit. And as I'm at it, let's go ahead and give our camera some of the settings that we want. So we're going to choose limits, and we're going to choose mist. And then for the limits, we can change the distance. And this is going to, if I pull this out, you can see we get that crosshair coming off of our camera right there, like so. That's good. I want that crosshair to be right around the flowers there. So I'm pulling that in right around there. Okay, let's pull a camera in a little bit and then make it a little bit wider. All right, something like that is kind of what I want. All right, yes, that looks pretty good. Maybe not quite so wide. but close to it. All right. Okay, and then this can be kind of on that table there. The focus will be right around that table. And then we'll have mist enabled, so under our world settings, we're going to go to our render layers, go passes, check mist there as well. And then we're going to go to our world settings here. We have the mist pass. Just go ahead and give this start and end of, you can see the mist pass is this bar here. If I go Z, you can see that's about right. We want about 5 to 30, or 5 to 25 is all we really need for the mist pass. So we can leave those settings as is. And this is the most exciting part of the series, guys, when we start to render. Now, don't expect it to look amazing at first, especially since it's such a low sample count. It's going to be pretty blotchy, but it's going to be a start. So we're going to save our project, we're going to hit F12, and we're going to render. And here is our first render. So what did I tell you? Ugly, right? And that's just because we need to fix the issues that are causing it to look so bad. First of all, the lighting. I realize now that I didn't actually block off everything in my finished tutorial as much as I have here. So I was letting a little bit more light in. So that's something I need to fix here. So I'm going to quick tab into edit mode and go to face select. And let's just grab these faces around the outside here. This one, this one, this one, that little one there. This one, and this one. Whoops, this one, this one. X and delete those faces. So I kind of left it open here. A bit, not this much open. I'm going to go ahead and grab this whole end here and give it a little bit of a longer room. Now, of course, I'm going to also have to grab our windows and pull those down. So grab the windows and their panes and the portal. So we can slide those down and line them back up approximately like so. It looks about right, maybe a tad bit further. All right, so then I'm going to kind of pull this back face up a bit higher. I'm going to extrude it up actually. And let's grab this back edge and pull it back all the way. So it's kind of overhanging it, but it's not completely blocking off the edges here. Now I'm going to grab this face, extrude it out the rest of the way to fill out our upstairs, and then this one as well, and extrude it out this ways to kind of fill out that. So we have this kind of opening still where light can kind of pour through in here and stuff, and it's not quite so blocked off. Now another thing I was going to do is I was going to make this window just a little bit bigger back here. So we let a little bit more light in. Let's grab that window, pull it over a bit, making the pane bigger. Maybe not quite so much, like so. And then grab our window pane and our light portal there. Pull it over, scale it along the y-axis till it's approximately the right size, and we'll drop it right in there. Scale on the y just a little bit more. All right. Okay, so that's looking better, and I think we'll render better with that. Now another thing is, I noticed we had light leaking through in this area, so let's fix that now. So for this, I'm guessing that the edge is just not going all the way through, and so I'm going to go ahead and grab this whole edge here. Unselect the vertices on top. Let's go to vertices select mode here, just keeping the vertices along the edge there, and then pull it into the beam a bit so we know that that's completely blocked off. And another thing I noticed is this material right here doesn't have a material, and I gave it kind of a black material in the finished scene. So click plus. I'm going to grab a black material here, kind of a lighter gray one that we created there, and go ahead and assign it to that right there. And the last but not least is I didn't ever tweak our whole material here, and what I did in our finished scene was I kind of made it a little bit of a, let me just pull it up here. Okay, I kind of made it less specular, so everything isn't quite so shiny. And then I give it just a teeny tiny bit of a warmish look to it. So you can kind of just touch the warmer end on your color wheel there, and that is all you really need to change. So a little less specular and a tad of warm, and hopefully that will help with our scene quite a bit. So now that I pulled our walls back here a little bit more, I was making room for the camera. So I want to change the camera angle a little bit. I want to make it zoomed in a bit more. So I'm going to go into about a 28mm lens here, which means that now I can pull it back because we have more room in our house. So I can pull it back a bit and then kind of reposition our camera just a little bit to fit it in there nicely. All right, and maybe rotate it down a tiny bit more so we can kind of see like that book back there a little bit more. Pull it up and fit it right in there like so. All right, get the rotation right. That looks to be good. I can't really see our books back here, and that's kind of a shame. So I might, I never gave this book material actually, so I should probably delete that. And I'm just going to duplicate some of these books up here. So I'll hit Shift D, pull them up, pull them over, pull them in, and then we're just going to tab into edit mode, delete the ones that we don't want here. So grab those, delete those vertices, and we'll just leave those 2 books there, I guess. That's all we really need. Little bit of extra book. Okay, cool. And yeah, from camera view you can see those just a little bit. In a different angle though, you could easily see them. And then this bad boy here needs to come down just a tad. All right, let's bring up our render image here just so we can see anything else that we might want to change now. So if the lighting was better, we got that changed. Thinking with the new angle, we'll try it with some more samples now. I'm thinking it'll look quite a bit better. So let's try it again now with some more samples, and we should be getting a little bit more of a refined look to our scene. So I'm gonna go ahead and crank our samples up to like 250 now, and we will see if we see an improvement when we render. Okay, and this result here is what we're getting right now, and it's a bit better. Still needs a little bit of tender loving care, you could say, to make it look a little bit nicer still, but we're getting progress. It's looking more along the right track. So I'm going to change it to slot 2 so we can see the changes next time we make a change. I'm going to hit Shift Space. So for our couch material, first of all, let me open up that rendered results over here. We can see that it looks a little too shiny still. So to take down some of the shininess, I would grab the couch. Let me just clear that out there. Grab the couch, and I'm going to take the specularity down even more. So we're going to go down to about a 0.1. And okay. And then also the tint of it, I want it to be a little bit less red still, a little bit more green. So I'm going to actually take the red down a little bit here on this. I'm going to up the green just a tad, and the blue can come up a little bit too. Okay, something like that, and maybe make the bump just a little bit more intense. So I'm going to go about a 0.27. You can't go too much with the bump or things will start to look bad, but we can get away with a little bit. All right, so that should do it. Right now it kind of looks like a leather couch, which, you know, it could work for your scene, but I'm going for not a leather couch. And actually, I think the whole couch looks a little small to my eyes right now. Maybe just a tad. Grab the different parts of the couch here, this one too, scale it along the Z, just slightly to make it a little bit bigger there. Okay, and this little bench here, stool thing, could be scaled up a little bit more and drop down just a little bit more. Okay, like so. All right, things are looking pretty good. I accidentally went a little too purple. You can see how just a tiny bit makes a ton of difference on our overall material here. So I'm going to pull that back a little bit towards the orangier, greenish look, like right about there. And that should help the overall color of our scene a bit. And then the angle still needs a little bit of work. It's a little bit too far zoomed out. So I want to grab it along the X to kind of pull it over this ways a bit more. And then I can rotate it back this ways a bit. So we see like a little bit more of the stairs in the scene. And I can pull it in a little bit tighter then. So it's a little tricky to fit everything into your scene. And sometimes you might have to move things around a little bit and stuff to really get it. Like, it's never too late to move something a little bit. So for example, this whole setup here, maybe we can pull this in a little bit. And let's grab the TV. And not that, but the beam. I think, you know what, this beam and this should be separate. So I'm going to go P and separate from selection, and then grab it and join it up with our stereo there. So that join together now, and then we can grab everything here, grab that as well. All right, and I need to Option H. Okay, it's over on this layer. That's right. Option H. Unhide those things, turn on both layers so we can see it, and pull it all over. Grab the TV, pull it all over a little bit more, so it's a little bit more in the shot. And then maybe grab our stereo system and the things and those things, yes, and scale it along the Z just a little bit tighter, and then pull it over this way a little bit so it's not intersecting. Okay, something like that, just to make it a little bit better. All right, I think that's going to be a little better. And yeah, I think with this new camera angle, things are going to look quite a bit nicer, a little bit more focused on what we want. Okay, and then as we can see in our reference image here, we have a little bit of a light leak coming in along here. So to fix that, you would just grab the vertice edge right around there, I guess that would be right. Whoops, Control Option H. Yes, and you just scale it along the Z a tad to close in that gap. Okay, and what else do we think might need tweaking? Actually, it's looking pretty good. We still have our compositing to do, but besides that, I think I could pull these ferns out, that whole fern bush real quick, pull this out a little bit more. So grab all those and unhide that. All right, and this bucket isn't really over our fern bush back here. Also, this plant is a little dark. We could grab the plant, which is the model. It's actually down here still. This one here. Yep. And we could just tweak the colors of this to be a little brighter. So I'm going to brighten this up a little bit by taking the color up a little bit. There we go. I have two of them here actually. Just brighten it up a little bit. Okay, that's all I want to do. And that should help quite a bit. So with those changes done, I think we're ready to render and composite our image. The one thing I might, well, you know what? Things are looking pretty good actually. Can't really complain about anything too much. So let's give ourselves a final render. There's gonna be a few things that we probably would want to tweak, but we gotta call it tutorial. Because we're getting a little long on this part. So I'm going to give ourselves a final render. So I'm going to save our project. And before actually I render, a lot of people want to know how I animated the scene, which is really simple. So I will give a quick overview though. First, I'm going to change my frames to be just about 4 seconds. So it'll be 1 to 100, and I'm going to render it at 20 frames per second right there. So I'm going to go ahead and add a keyframe here. And I'm going to grab my camera. This isn't any keyframe. This is an automatic keyframe. So when you move any object, you'll add a keyframe. I should clarify that real quick. So I'm going to quick rotate my camera along the Z-axis a little bit. So starting over here more, where you can see sort of the television set and whatnot. Pan my camera along to frame 1, my timeline along to frame 1. Rotate it along the Z some more. And this will be back more towards that side. And you can see when I let go, it automatically adds a keyframe. So you can see we have that sort of motion now, just a slight bit of motion, but that's all I really used for this angle in the shot anyways. And then what I do is I don't like the fade in and fade out, so I go to the dope sheet here, or the graph editor. You can see they're all kind of faded like that on an angle. And I want to grab it all, hit V, and choose vector. So now it's going to just start and stop immediately with no fading. So that's the basic keyframing. It actually looks like our scene's slightly rotated wrong, so I might tab the rotation back a little bit on like keyframes, like so. And then when you render it out, you're just going to render it out as an image sequence. So you pick a folder, you render all your images there. So if you leave this as PNG, render animation, it will fill that folder up with the different frames. And then I have a tutorial actually that you guys can check out on how to take those frames then and combine them into a video. It's really simple actually. So nothing too complicated there. Okay, so let's kind of finish off this real quick now. I think we're ready to call it a render. So I'm going to save my project. Actually, you know what? I'm seeing one thing here that I want to tweak. And if you already have keyframes on, it's still something you can do. And we're just going to go to our camera settings here. I'm going to grab our Z location. I'm going to grab both those keyframes on the Z location and just grab them along the Y. And you can actually change the location of your camera still. Even though it's keyframed, it's just moving them. So grab both those, grab along the Y, I'll pull it down a little bit. And then I want to pull it in a little bit. So we'll grab the X location, zoom out because this one is not in view. Where is the X location? Let me see, is it up here? Is this the X location? No, that's the X rotation. Just zooming out to try and find where it is. Right there. Okay, grab both those, grab them along the Y, and we can pull it side to side a little bit still. And then the Y location. So I'm going to grab the Y location right here, grab it along the Y, and kind of pull it in a little bit tighter. All right. Okay, so now we can just kind of pick a frame that we want to render. I'll pick a frame right in here. And maybe not quite so much in the Y location, just so we can keep everything in the shot more. Right about there, it looks good. Save our project file, and now I'm going to give it a much higher render. I'll give it a 1920 by 1080p render. All right, 1080. And I'm going to actually give it 1,000 samples. Now this will take a while on a slow system. So if your system can't handle it, just render it at a smaller resolution or less samples. But to really get it clean for an interior shot like this, I found you had to go all the way up to about 1,000. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to save my project and let's render. This is the most exciting part of the tutorial, guys. So here it goes, and I'll be back with you guys when that finishes. Okay, and it finished here, but I had a little bit of a render mistake because I forgot to hide my Boolean modifiers. So I'm going to have to render again. It's on the other layer here, so just have to turn that off, and that was it. But it's actually okay because there's another little thing I need to tweak real quick. The chair's looking better, maybe a little too orange now, and still a little specular. So I might actually quick change that a little bit. So we go to the node editor right here, and just take the bump up a little bit more. I think we can go up to about 0.3. And then the colors, maybe a little bit more red, just a tiny bit more red in there. And a little bit kind of goes a long way, as you can tell. And the specular, I'll take it down to about a 0.08. So it won't be as shiny. Okay, but everything else is looking pretty good, minus those white blobs. And yeah, I think I'm ready to render it again. One other thing is I can actually bring these tables in a little closer to the camera. So I'm going to grab these, unhide that. Okay, I want to scale this one a little bit bigger too. Scale along the, whoops, you have to turn off your keyframe option there, that's important. And I'm going to scale this on the Shift Z just a little bit bigger. And pull it a little bit closer to the camera, so it's a little bit more of a focal point in the scene. Same thing with both those objects. I'll grab both of them and pull them in a bit closer to the camera. I think that looks a little nicer. For this, you could turn the render up to be 4 if you think it would look, or 6, I mean. You could subdivide it one more time. Sometimes you can get a little bit more bumps going, but I'm going to leave it at a render of 5 for now, just because it's going to render faster. And I never set the actual focal setting here for our camera. So you go to f-stop, and I'm going to change it to be about a 2.8. And then I will give it a little bit of bokeh, 5 blades for bokeh. That's just kind of a blur effect that you'll get. But otherwise, this looks good. Maybe I could actually tweak this material to be slightly yellower still, our base material. So just a little bit, because we know how much a little bit goes. But something like that. Oh, maybe a little bit less. I'm afraid to go too far now. But I think that will look good. And let's render one more time. I also want to grab a frame where the camera's rotated just a little bit more this ways. Yeah, something like that. Okay. And maybe I can also move this whole thing, not the camera, in just a little bit more. Whoops, I'm moving that light up there too. Not you. In just a little bit more. Okay. Just to kind of fill it into the frame a little bit better. And we're ready to render. You can see that the reflections are looking pretty good in the TV. And everything is looking about right. So let's give it a final render, and then we'll do that little bit of compositing to make it really pop, and we'll be done. So I'm going to save my scene. With everything set up, I can render it with just that layer selected, and we'll be good. Okay, and here is the render we are left with. So it's looking pretty good, and I think it is ready for some compositing. I mean, there's little things that could always be tweaked. I spent a while tweaking my scene, but this is a great result for the amount of time we put into it, and it's time to move on to the compositing. So one thing you can do to make sure your lighting is the way you want it right now is just tweak the exposure some more in the world settings here until you feel like you get the right amount of brightness in your scene. So for this, I feel like right around 3 is going to be good, and then we'll move on to the compositing, and we can also change it to high contrast and get just a little bit more contrast in the scene, and I think that looks kind of nice as well. So now we'll move on to compositing. We're going to choose use nodes, and this is going to be pretty quick and add a bit of nice realism to it. So first off, we're going to go ahead and drop in a converter color ramp, and we're going to take the image into it. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and check backdrop as well, and then we're going to go Shift A and add in a sunbeams node. So this is under filter sunbeams. Connect the image to the image, and here we're going to give a little bit of a sunbeam volumetric effect to our scene. So we're going to go Control Shift, click that sunbeams image there, and you won't see anything until you give it some ray length. So we're going to go ahead and give it a ray length of about a 0.2, and you can see right now it's just coming straight at you, and that's because our X and Y coordinates here are centered on the center. So I'm going to take the Y coordinates here and move it upwards a bit. So our point is about a 0.7. And first off, I need to go to our color ramp, and I need to increase the blacks all the way until nothing but really the windows have light coming out of them. All right, so right around there is where I'm going for. And then increase the whites a bit too to make those windows even brighter. Now, if you do have areas like I do here where you have white in the scene, you need to get rid of it, you can do this really easy and really quickly with a matte. So I'm going to go ahead and quick show you how to do that. Box matte, Shift A, add in the box matte. We're just going to take the position of it, move it over there a little bit. I'm holding Shift because this moves kind of fast. So holding Shift and changing these values will make it a little easier to fine tune them. And I'm just changing this X and Y scale here a little bit, and then the location down to where we have the white that we don't want. So we'll place the mask right over that. And then I'm going to drop this in. We'll leave it at, if I go Control Shift, click the mask, you'll see it's black and white. I'm going to drop in a color invert, so it's white and black. And then I'm going to multiply it. So color, mix, drop it right in there, but after the color ramp node, and multiply it in the bottom socket. So we take out the white that we don't want in the scene. So now the sunbeams are coming straight out of the window like we want, and it's looking pretty good. I might change the X location a little bit. You can kind of play around with this until you get a sunbeams look that you like. Something like a maybe 0.4 is good. So I'll leave it at 0.4, and then I'm going to take these sunbeams and I'm going to multiply them to give them a little bit more of an intensity. So I'm going to drop in a vector, there's a math node, so it would be under converter math. And we're going to make it multiply so we can give it a little bit more intensity. All right, that's looking good. Something like that. And then we want to blur it a bit. So I'm going to add a filter, blur, drop it in there as well. Fast Gaussian, so it's fast. And then relative, and we can just give it about a 0.4. So it's kind of a softer looking rays. We're just going to continue moving our composite node out of the way here. We'll need this for the end. All right, and now that I have this sort of map, I'm going to add it. So I'm going to go color, mix. I'm going to change it to add, and I'm going to add it to our mist pass. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the mist pass in the bottom, or the top socket, and I'll drop this one into the bottom. And we can see that we have our image added to our mist pass, but our mist pass is too bright. So I'm going to duplicate our multiply node onto our mist pass. Okay, so this is our mist pass going into the multiply, going into our add. I'm going to take this down, so it's going to be a darker image. And we'll take it down to about a 0.2, or even less, maybe a 0.1. So we have a darker mist pass with our volumetric lighting coming through. Now that I see it in the scene, I think I want to raise it up even more. So I'm going to go to about a 0.8. So it's kind of coming downwards a little bit more, and that's looking pretty nice. And you can change the length a little bit too. Maybe 1.5 would be a better length for the rays. And you can see that looks pretty nice. So we're going to go ahead, and now that it's added here, we can take this and I'm going to mix it with our original image. So color, mix, drop it in here. Actually, we can drop it right in here. And this is going to be the factor that we mix in some warm colored lighting. So we're going to change this bottom factor to be kind of our warm light, kind of a slightly warm yellowish light. If we go Control Shift, you can see that we have all that sort of warm lighting added to our scene. And it looks pretty good, but it's a little bit intense. So I'm going to duplicate this image one more time, and we're going to mix it with our original image in the bottom socket. So we can choose now how much we want it to be the original image and how much we want it to be the old or the new. So this is how it was before, and we can just tune this back, letting some of that volumetric sort of lighting effects come into play as much as we want. So I'll let it come in to about, that much or so. So it's very subtle, but you get sort of that glow and some of those rays coming in different areas, and it looks pretty nice. So yeah, I'm going to go around about a 0.92, I think. It looks pretty good, and that'll do it for that. So the next node is going to be kind of, well, let's do the color next. So for the color, I'm going to go Shift A, color balance, drop it in there, and I'm going to change it to offset, power, and slope. So this will give us better control over the light without ruining our colors as we could if we did it the other ways. So with it set to this, I'm going to tweak the, let me see here. I'm just kind of comparing my original. All right, so this value is the highlights, and I can increase the highlights a little bit more by raising this up. And if I go all the way up, you can see that's what it's looking like. Okay, there it updates. I'm not going to go all the way up, but I'm going to go up a little bit, and then I'm going to go up a little bit on this one too, and this is going to kind of increase the darker areas a bit, the blacks a bit more. So I can go ahead and add in a little bit more blacks then. So something like that is looking pretty good. All right. And then for the coloring, I'm going to kind of take this into the warmer sort of purpley orange or reddish color here a little bit, just a little bit. And then for this one, it actually works opposite. So you'll see if I go to the green, it gives it the purple. It's kind of confusing on why it does that, but you just go with it. That's how it goes. I don't have the scientific answer on offhand. The reason it works that way is it's just the way it works for now. So we're going to go ahead and pull this up towards, giving it kind of a greenish, yellowish tint. So slightly towards the blue and purple values. All right. And that's looking pretty nice and warm. Maybe a little too much, actually. Maybe come down a little bit there. And maybe pull this one in a little bit more. But overall, it's looking pretty nice. And we can increase our blacks a little bit more by pulling that up. Okay. We can also, if we want, take the exposure down a little bit now in our scene too. If we feel like it's getting a little overexposed. Take it down just a tad. Like so. Alright, so that is looking pretty good. Now another node that we'll drop in here real quick is the glare node. So this is just going to give some foggy glow to our windows. So I'm going to change it to fog glow, and I'm going to give it a threshold of about a 0.7. And then I'm going to take the mix factor down a bit, because we can see right here if I go before and after, well actually I'm not seeing too much effect, just seeing over here a little bit. Maybe I take the threshold down a little bit more. And then we see a lot of glow coming in these areas where we don't really want it. So I'll increase it up a bit to kind of get rid of some of that glow. And if I take the mix all the way to 1, you can see exactly what is glowing and what is not. And actually, I'm not getting as much glow coming through the windows as I might like. So I could kind of use, well, I'm just going to take the threshold down a little bit more. And it's okay if the floor glows here a little bit, I guess, because I'm going to be taking the mist down. So take the threshold down until you see some coming through the windows there. And it'll also be glowing off the floor, but that's fine. So about a 0.5 is the happy point. And then I'm going to take the mix down to about a -0.5. So it's not too intense. And we can see that's what it looks like now. You get a little bit of glow on the floor, but that's okay, because that, you know, could happen in a picture as well. But there we have it. It's looking very nice. I usually add a little bit of sharpness to my renders then. Alright, so the node I'm looking for is the filter node, and we can just change this to sharpen, drop it in here. And this is something that could be done in like Photoshop or After Effects or Lightroom or something, but you can also do it right in Blender a little bit here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of sharpening to our scene, taking this way down from 1. I'm just going to give it like a 0.1, and even that might be too strong. Now let's see what's looking like before and after. Oh yeah, 0.1 is still way too strong. 0.04 or something for a slight bit of sharpness to our scene. But that is looking pretty good. If you wanted to add just more light rays and less of the mist, you could go to your add node here now and change this to like a 2. And you'll see the light rays come in more intense and everything else not. So that's kind of cool. Maybe a little bit of that is good, 1.5 or so. And I think we need to crush our blacks just a little bit more. So I'm going to pull this value up a little bit more to crush the blacks a little bit there. But that is that, guys. That is how you create a modern interior in Blender. That is our finished results. I think it's pretty nice looking. I hope you guys had fun doing this tutorial, following along. Share your results in the comments, and also leave a like if you enjoyed this tutorial, because it helps me to know what kind of content you guys want to see next. So leave a like, share your results in the comments, and I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. So bye!